Welcome to another edition of Who's in Bloom. I'm your host, Anjel. For this episode, I'm going to be talking about Camas. One of the most beautiful parks in the Willamette Valley is Bush Pasture Park in Salem, Oregon. It is home to the traditional Camas, Camisa Quamish fields of the Kalapuya people, who harvested the bulbs for an important food source prior to colonization. The indigenous people were forced off their land by settlers and prevented from continuing their traditional methods of fire ecology that cleared the savannas and encouraged the camas to proliferate in these environments. This caused a decline of suitable habitat for camas to bloom in its traditional range throughout the Pacific Northwest. After the area around the Bush homestead was turned into a park, efforts were made to conserve the area, and now the park is managed specifically to encourage and support the growth of these beautiful flowers by waiting to mow the park after the camas has had time to drop its seeds. Right now, if you walk into rare meadows and oak savannas around the Willamette Valley and throughout the small remaining fragment in the Pacific Northwest, you can see these camas fields in bloom like many deep indigo stars on a grassy green field. For me, they invoke feelings of the essence of springtime where I currently live and remind me of the importance of honoring the people who are the traditional keepers of the land. To describe them for the sake of those listening and not able to look upon their blooms visually at the moment, they are a bulbous perennial plant that form flowers on racemes or stalks with many flowers that consist of 6 petals, ranging from sky blue to deep indigo, and bright yellow stamens, common in lily relatives. Because of their bulbous nature, when they find a suitable area, they grow in an abundance, and they can carpet meadows with the promise of bulbs to be harvested in the summer. The bulbs were traditionally roasted up to 24 to 48 hours, dried, and then eaten or traded throughout the rest of the year by tribes throughout the Pacific Northwest. I found one blog on wild harvesting that mentions how to forage camas and caution foragers to wait until mid-June to collect the bulbs in order to avoid the death camas, Toxicoscridion venomosum, since it is still flowering and can be easily avoided. The blog goes on to say that the bulbs of the death camas are deadly poisonous and look very similar to the edible varieties Camisa quamash and Camisa lichenii. Death camas has white flowers, tighter flower clusters, and flowers that mature later in the season, usually later in June. I also found a resource on harvesting camas by Elise Crone from the Washington Public School Indigenous Education Outreach Program that cites some traditional knowledge about harvesting camas I will cite in the following show notes. And I quote, "Through using traditional harvesting techniques, we can increase the bounty of prairie foods, including camas. Narrow T-shaped digging sticks that are made from hardwood, bone, antler, or metal make it possible to selectively harvest the bulbs without damaging them or disturbing large sections of prairie. Harvesting also aerates the soil and allows moisture pockets to form, making it easier for new seeds to sprout. When you dig bulbs, keep the larger ones and replant the smaller ones. Be careful not to split the camas bulbs in half with your tool. This takes practice." End quote. If you do want to try out foraging for this plant, I recommend reaching out to an indigenous person or a forage expert before you're setting out. To eat camas, you can bake it for an hour at 275 degrees, but this method produces a much starchier food and doesn't quite capture the full flavor of camas. The best way to enjoy camas is the slow-cooked steamed method for anywhere from 24 to 36 hours, which is similar to how they were cooked traditionally. This produces a much richer and sweeter culinary ingredient that can be incorporated into soups and used to sweeten different foods or even eaten dry. Camas is an invitation for me to really get to learn the land through the indigenous-centered knowledge and also make an effort to support Native organizations and initiatives as my land tax to the people who were here first. As someone of settler ancestry, I feel it's important for me to support the people of the land and engage in actively dismantling white supremacy. Land tax doesn't have to be some huge amount of money. I just try to make an effort to support Native rights organizations with a small monetary donation to the Native Youth Chapter here in Portland, Oregon. Camas reminds me that I live on stolen land and that I have a responsibility to give back and honor the spirits of that land. It's hard for me to choose a favorite wildflower in any place that I have lingered long enough to fall in love, but Camas is one of my favorites of the Pacific Northwest. If you happen to live in an area that can grow these flowers, I invite you to check out Native Food Nursery, where they have great Camas bulbs for sale. And they dedicate a portion of their proceeds from every native plant towards nativehope.org. Thank you for tuning in to this edition of Who's in Bloom. This is Anjel, signing off with a reminder to stop and adore the flowers.